Hey, welcome to Overtime, where we take Sunday's message further. My name is Jeremy, and I'm your host. And this is a podcast where we just want to ask the questions that we think that you would ask as it relates to Sunday's message. And as we do so, we hope that it helps you grow in your life and your faith. With that being said, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all of the podcasts that are coming out. Not only that, hit the like button, because when you do so, it helps us help other people. And if you ever have a question about Sunday's content or about Overtime, you can submit those to overtime@npaustin.com, and we will be sure to get to those in future podcasts. So with that being said, here's a quick recap of Sunday, and then we're going to jump into our conversation today.
I want to talk about how in the world can you and I take a step and put yourself in a better posture to be more generous. I want us to look at what Jesus has to say in Matthew 24 and 25. If I had to summarize both chapters, be ready. Be intentional. Be purposeful. Jesus, why are you telling us to be ready? Because I'm coming back. Heaven's kingdom is like a wealthy man who summoned all of his trusted servants and assigned his financial management over to them, each according to his ability to manage. The one who was entrusted with 5,000 gold coins came and brought 10,000. He says, you have done well because you have been faithful steward to manage a small sum. Now I'm going to put you in charge of much. What's up with the guy who dug a hole and buried it? I was afraid of you, so I went and hid your money, but here it is. Take it, it's yours. When it comes to money, it's not yours, it's God's. You're managers, not owners. And ultimately, Jesus says, keep in mind that you're going to be accountable.
Well, welcome everybody. We are in part 3 of our series on the paradox of generosity. And if you happen to listen to that intro, you will know that I am not Jeremy Edelin. I am your guest host for the foreseeable future, next couple of weeks, because if you've been following, Jeremy's been talking a lot about their coming child, and he is here. Grayson is born this past weekend. Was it late Friday or early Saturday, Josh? Was it? Technically, I think it was early Saturday. I know people are going to be really curious about that, so they need to know the exact time. But he will be out for the next couple of weeks, and everything went great. Baby is healthy. He's adorable, and we're just so excited for them. And that means you get me for the next couple of weeks. And so I'm really excited to get to be a part of this. And today we have Chris and Christina Dohring or Dohring, because I've pronounced it both ways, and then I get corrected. Just not a donut. Dohring.
Dohring is very southern.
I like that. That's kind of fun that you guys almost have the same first name too.
Yeah.
Chris and Christina.
Yeah, we went by Chris and Chris for most of our marriage.
Did you really?
Mm-hmm.
Indeed.
That's a fun fact. I didn't even
When
know.
my friends from high school and college used to call, it would be, hey, can I talk to Chris? If she answered the phone, and she would be like,
I would have fun.
yeah, this is Chris. And
Wow.
they'd be like, the guy.
Yeah, which one? Deeper voice, please. That's awesome. That's great. Well, why don't you guys, just to get our conversation started, just let people know who you are a little bit. Maybe, what you do, how long you've been part of Northpoint, whatever comes to your mind.
Sure. I'm Chris, obviously. And we've been going to Northpoint for about 5 years, I think. Does that sound right?
I think it's 6 now, but yeah.
Yeah, it may be 6 now. So yeah, we've been around a bit. I am in IT, so I do software support for actually a bank up in Buffalo, New York area. So work completely from home most of the time. So yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, sounds good. I'm Christina, obviously, and I work as VP of Ops for a company called Parametrics Medical, and I work almost exclusively from the office. So it's been quite the switch for our family over the last few years to make that shift. So it's been fun.
Yeah, 100%. You've been from home pre-COVID.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's just been your norm always.
Yeah,
Okay.
last 6 years. So,
That makes sense. Yeah, so not as much of an adjustment.
Yeah, no change for me.
Yeah.
So it was actually weirder having everybody at home.
Yeah, I bet. No, I've heard that, with people that was their norm, and now everybody's in. You're like, oh, this is a much bigger adjustment that way. So no, that makes sense. And you guys have 2 girls?
We do.
Correct.
2 teenagers, so they're 14 and 16, just about to be 15 and 17, so we're having fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Boys are in the picture now, and it's complicated.
Oh, man, I can't even
edit
imagine.
that out. They will kill you. Oh, my gosh.
I can't even. I mean, that's still so far away from me. If I had a daughter, I just can't even imagine. So, it's actually, I was thinking about Joe, because I know just Joe a little better of your 2 daughters. And We talk a lot about being for the next generation, say that on stage, and people hear that a lot, but she is such an awesome, tangible example of that, because people probably don't even know. She's a junior, right? And she has been through our media intensive, and people have seen bumper videos she's edited and baptism stories she's been a part of and video shoots that she's been on and interviews and all kinds of stuff. And she is a part of the media team now, and she's unbelievably talented. I mean, so creative, so high quality. It's just another example. I'm so passionate about what we do here, but positions like that and you guys, obviously have done a fantastic job.
We just drive her everywhere.
yeah.
That's our main
driving her to locations. Yeah, exactly.
That's about it. No, but I think to that point though, for her, she found a place that she fit. So that's a really special thing. I think, equally, it's great that she's getting skills and learning a fantastic thing that she'll be able to use for the rest of her life, and also serving God. But the opportunity to fit in and, these are my people and this is where I fit and I get to make a difference is a really big deal for her. So
that's
really
awesome.
Neat.
No, it's so huge.
Yeah.
It's just so real here. I was, part of my role is trying to figure out what is our, strategy with digital and what does the future look like. And I was whiteboarding one day and she was here working on a project and I was like, hey, can you just pop in here and what would you do to change the world? Basically, I'm like, this is all the stuff we're thinking. And she's starting to give me all this feedback and YouTube and everything. It's just so cool. And it's amazing. So many ideas, so much creativity, but a big part of what we do. In the same vein, this has nothing to do with where we're going in the conversation today with this podcast, but this has become one of my favorite questions recently. I think because of Jeremy Edelin and, all of the combos he's been having and him and I meeting, what he's thinking about, now that he's a dad and all of that, which is also funny. I met him in middle school and we were college roommates. And there's this part of me that's like, we should never be allowed to be fathers. How does that even happen? Who lets you do that? Yeah. And I think he's going to be, maybe one of the most incredible I've ever seen. But, those two together. But I was thinking about that. And we've noticed that in a lot of circles, conversations, I don't know if this is the whole world, our culture, if this is ministry in particular, but people tend to lead with the worst stories of their children, right? I'm thinking if I'm trying to sell somebody on something, I'm an Apple fanatic, I'm gonna I feel like I should take some kind of commission for Apple. I'm like, here's this iPad, it's amazing. Here's all I can. They just put the M1 and the new iPad Pro, and here's Apple Pencil and all this kind of stuff. But with kids, they're like, okay, here's my kids, and they threw up on this person, and they broke this bone, and they're this expensive, and they failed this class, and this teacher is mad at me, and all this, and they're talking back, and all this. You should be a parent. It's an amazing experience. And it's a little confusing on the pre-kid side. Obviously, I know some of that's just in jest, and people are just joking and stuff. But I have been curious, asking people, and it's been really fun to ask, what is your favorite part? What is the best part about being a parent?
I'm making you go first.
That's fine. I'm changing it up from our pre-interview conversation. So I think the coolest thing I think about having kids is watching them grow and learn and seeing how they interact with the world. A great example for us is we're kind of board game nerds. So we play a lot of board games around the house. And as the kids were growing up, we kind of introduced them to, more complicated games than just Monopoly or Sorry or whatever. So at very young ages, I would be playing Seven Wonders with the kids and playing, Settlers of Catan and Carcassonne and games like that, which, a lot of people don't even know what those are. And, just watching their brains spin and trying to figure out how to play and interact and deal with winning and deal with losing and things like that. I just think that's super cool to watch, kids, absorb that kind of thing and learn. So,
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I think so. I always remember the story of, it was actually, we'd already had Joe. She was a preemie, so that was an exciting time in our lives. And then we were talking about having another baby, and Chris's dad looks at him, and Chris was like, I don't know. And he was hesitating, and Chris's dad just looks at him and goes, you will never be ready for children. Just have another child. I think that was the kicker.
Yeah, you'll never be ready.
But I'm the weird mom who infants stressed me out. I did great with them, but they stressed me out. And the older my kids get, the more fun I have.
Yeah.
So every day just gets to be more fun, even the stressful ones where we're trying to figure out how do we manage emotions and learning opportunities and all of that.
Yeah.
If you're scared of babies, it's it's doable.
Yeah.
It can be survived.
Yeah. No, that's helpful because I don't know if Emily's fine with me sharing this publicly, but that is her big concern. She's like, I wish we could somehow like jump a year forward. Like, how can we get to that stage? I'm just going to be nervous constantly. And
You're not sleeping anyways. You don't notice.
Yeah.
It was stressful, but we did it.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you guys answering that. It's just fun that there's been a really wide range of answers, and there's always some degree of like, it's hard to articulate. There's that thing you just don't know till you are and all of that, which has been pretty consistent too. But I enjoy focusing on the positive side of it. Something to look forward to as well.
We tried to give you a little bit, something to look forward to.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
We definitely have other stories too.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. So, well, that's great. Let's veer towards this series that we've been in the last several weeks now that we just wrapped on Sunday. It's called The Paradox of Generosity. And the big idea of the series is really just in the title, that this kind of idea of grasping, we lose, and then, giving or being open-handed, we gain. And Buck did a cool job this past Sunday even of talking about how much ancient wisdom there is in that really no matter where you've grown up on the planet and no matter what has introduced your thinking, that this is a truism kind of across all cultures. And in this one in particular, in part 3, he focused on this idea of managers versus owners, which I love that concept so much because even if you don't know where you're at, with faith, you're figuring all that out. Like even if, from a, kind of agnostic or an atheistic perspective, there's like, we're here today and gone tomorrow. Like we come in and we manage this stuff. We can't take any of it with us no matter where we go. So even from that perspective, it's relevant to me. And certainly if you're a follower of Christ and you realize, okay, God's given me my ability to earn money. He's given me the resources that I have. It belongs to him. I'm just managing for him. It really changes so much in terms of how you utilize money. It changes so much in terms of your identity and how much that can be wrapped up into it. So to me, it was very helpful. And he, focused on this idea at the end of just challenging people to follow it, to even know where it's going, to make observations based on where it is going, and then to adjust accordingly. And our heart behind this kind of final conversation or final overtime today is to just get really practical with it. I think we've talked about a lot of really helpful perspective things throughout the series, but now it's like, okay, what do I do? And especially this is kind of like a starter conversation. If this is like, I've just never been intentional. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to talk about it. Money's weird. It's just always been this way or whatever that is. And you guys in particular, you have led Money Matters classes or small groups here at Northpoint. And that's the reason that we really wanted to invite you guys on today to say, hey, I'll just hand it over to you. And if we're having a conversation, what would be some of the highlights that you would hit and so on. So I thought about if we were to just start even with communication, how do I even talk about it? Because for so many people, that's just the thing. Again, you just kind of ignore. Maybe you just, adapt what you had from childhood or whatever it is. But if you were saying like, okay, I want to have a conversation with my partner, with my spouse, with my parents, whoever the person might be, how do I start to even have the conversation around money?
Yeah, I think my story is a little more exciting about that one. Chris grew up with parents who were great with money. He always knew how to talk about it, and it was just a normal part of life. I grew up with bankruptcy and very difficult times in life. So when he would start talking to me about money, I would be the one like Sheldon on The Big Bang Theory with the paper bag. Like I just I couldn't even breathe. I couldn't talk about it. Just let's avoid that topic completely. So for us, figuring out how to communicate about money actually shifted our entire marriage. And that's something we've seen in couples across the board of, I didn't even realize this was a marriage issue. This is a life issue that I can't talk about this or I can't handle this. So I think that's been something that's been a really big deal for us. And really the thing that changed for me was having hope. So it was finding a program, it was finding a plan that gave me actual hope. And if I could aim for hope, then I could talk about it. It was fine if it was hard. It was fine if we were in a great spot because we were going to get there together. But finding that hope to be able to go toward and that goal that we wanted together made a huge difference to be able to actually start to open up about that.
Wow. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah, too. And I think, Christina's example about me coming from a family that was financially stable, it was kind of like I was a little bit on the rebellious side. So kind of watching my parents do everything right and then getting out of college and then feeling like we needed to do everything that they did right out of the gate. So we went and bought a couple brand new cars at the same time, spent money like it was going out of style, things like that. So it was, interesting to grow up in a more sound financial, family. And then, we got together and did, completely the opposite pretty much. And I think too, like, that when we first started going through the process of exploring finances and stuff, it was, like Christina said, gave us the ability to talk about it to each other. I think having that strong foundation for sure was beneficial, and was easier for me, I think, to fall back into it. Right. Yeah. But it was, interesting to go from, stable to crazy to, stable again. So,
yeah. And I think sometimes for people that, haven't given that much thought or consideration, I mean, how much your past, even specifically your childhood, does play into this conversation. Yeah. That's just, it's like turning a light on. It's like a new room. You just, have never connected dots before. Yeah. I know for Emily and I think that's been one of the helpful things, is to realize that so often there's the conversation underneath the conversation. Mm-hmm. And I think Buck has, talked about this throughout the series. He's like, hey, money is, it's the most common replacement for God, because it's my, security, it's my control, it's how I can manage my world. And, for Emily and I, when we have, financial convos, especially like right off the bat early in our marriage, and we're doing finances together for the first time and stuff, it took a little while for us to realize like why the emotion would come up, whenever we disagreed or whatever that was. And, you start to learn about her childhood. And of course, this is a lot of counseling and stuff, but her having a very unstable childhood, stability and security is so important to her. Mm-hmm. And so, she's nervous. Man, I bought one too many lattes, and the next step is homelessness. Like that's, that's where we're there. Are you mad at me and all that kind of stuff? And for me, it's the exact opposite. I get more comfortable, but for me, it's more linked to identity in terms of like, am I capable? Am I man enough? Am I husband enough? Am I providing enough? So if there's any questions there, it's like she's questioning, me as a husband. And I'm like, oh, no, she literally just asked a very black and white budget question. She loves me. And so, there's a lot of complexity, I think, that lies underneath the conversation. Have you guys seen that in your, leading groups and on the other side of people in Money Matters? Have you seen that come up?
Yeah, I think it's important for everybody to know having trouble talking about money is normal. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's the norm. For couples who have figured it out, they're the weird ones. Yeah. They're the ones that are like, oh, how did you do that? That's pretty cool. It's just not something in our culture that's talked about either, is you just aren't supposed to talk about money. And even, we're talking about parenting and all of that. Our kids are going through multiple classes now where the school is requiring that they do a project where they go into massive amounts of debt to go to school in their pretend lives that they've developed. So for a lot of people, these thought processes have become culturally acceptable and culturally a part of who we are. And we don't even realize it. How many of those students are recognizing that this is what's being taught to them? They're just doing their class project and getting it over with. Wow. So being able to, especially with all the classes we've been to, the amount of people that can't talk, like they don't understand how to communicate, and then learning to communicate. It's so normal to not know how to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think too, the Money Matters curriculum that we use here is basically based off of Dave Ramsey or Ramsey Solutions financial piece. So it's basically a 7-step process that they lay out, and it keeps everything kind of linear. And the first 3 steps are pretty simple. It's save $1,000. That's kind of what they consider the baby emergency fund. And then the second step is get out of debt. So you take everything but your mortgage debt, and you rank them based on number. So like how much you have to how little you have. You pay off the lowest and then go to the highest in that order. And the whole general idea is to build financial behaviors that give you quick wins. So if you have a $50 debt at Target or something, that would be your first one you pay off, and then you move to the next one up and you get those wins. And the thing that he talks about constantly is finances are behavioral more than anything else. So it's 80% behavior, 20% actually doing it, So it's that idea of changing those behaviors in your mind, in your day-to-day life, that really gives you that urge to move forward and to make the strides that you need to make. So
Wow. And the rest, just to finish the list.
Yeah, sure. So the third one is emergency fund. So it's 3 to 6 months of living expenses set aside. Yep. 4 is college, correct? Mm-hmm. Yep. It's been a little bit. And then 5 is it's before college is retirement. So 4 is retirement, then 5 is save for college expenses for kids. 6 is to pay off the mortgage, and then
7 is
Seven
to
is
live
to
and
basically
give.
live and give like
Kind
no
of the
one else.
radical
Yeah.
generosity stage. Yeah,
Exactly. So that's
Awesome.
where you get to that,
Awesome.
radical generosity. And that, of course, doesn't mean that you can't be generous along the way.
Yeah.
But it's that idea of, once you get to that end goal, it's,
You get to be crazy.
you get
Yeah.
to be
Fun.
wild and crazy with your giving, which is
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. He is really good at clarifying that saving is happening throughout and giving's happening throughout, but once you get out of that kind of debt stage especially.
Yep.
But that's awesome. It's just so helpful. I think what's fun about that curriculum is just those 7 steps already provides direction. And then you can go way down the rabbit hole of getting into all the books and the podcasts and the resources and groups and so on, and personalizing it, but it's just so clarifying. So the next kind of order I have on here is Buck talked about tracking it this week. He said follow it, watch it, where it's going. For somebody who's just never done that before, maybe they have a gut feel, maybe they have a lot and they don't think they need to, or maybe it's again, they've never had direction or clarity and it's always just kind of been messy and gray for them. What would you say to somebody, maybe in terms of the why, but also just in terms of some practical steps? Hey, this is what I might recommend to start tracking it.
Yeah, I think from a practical perspective, I think when we first started the program, the Dave Ramsey steps, whatever you want to call it, it was about 8 years ago. And, we kind of stumbled back onto the Dave Ramsey stuff by, we were at church one day and the kids were walking around the church library looking for some kids' books to take out. And I had just saw the Financial Peace by Dave Ramsey sitting on the shelf. And I had heard it from a couple friends before. And I was like, maybe we'll take this one out of the library. So we got it out. And then I, of course, forgot about it. Christina read it in like a day. She's like, you need to read this. So I was like, okay, fine, I'll read it.
Yep.
I read it, and then we kind of started to really realize that maybe there was some hope there. But I think on a practical level, once we started to sit down and write things out in a budget format, I was like, there's no way we can get any money out of this. We are spending every penny every month on everything that we need to do. And she's like, no, let's just do this. Let's do it. And, by the end of the month, we had, I think, $150, $200 that, we had, where did this money come from? We didn't spend it. So it was just, just seeing where the things were going, we spent X amount of money at, restaurants or whatever, it's that idea of figuring out where the money is going so that you can course correct and figure out how to spend money on what you truly want to spend money on.
Right.
That's really the key. So.
Right.
And I think too it is an eye-opener moment. So be prepared. Don't go into that lightly.
Yeah,
there are, folks who, sit down and they look at it for the first time like, oh my goodness, I had no idea this is what I was doing. There's folks who can laugh at it and say, wow, we spend $750 a month at Chick-fil-A.
Right.
I probably shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
But just going through that process. We'll tell you later.
Yeah.
But figuring out where the money is going is absolutely an eye-opener, and it's so helpful. So it's definitely, it can be a bit of a shocker, but don't hesitate to do it. Just be prepared. So if you're going to do it with your spouse, do it with your spouse. Don't let that become a wedge between a marriage where it could easily become a finger-pointing situation or something along those lines. Be in it together. And then if you're single or you're trying to figure that out on your own, then just go ahead and do it, but make sure you've got somebody there. Tell somebody, hey, I'm going to look at my finances. Do you mind if I call you if I'm really freaked out afterward? And just have that conversation with somebody that they can trust. So that whole behavioral, that part of community, being afraid to talk about money is going to hurt you in this situation. So make sure that you're open and available to talk to somebody about it. Chris and I are always willing to talk about it. I know the Wades run Money Matters right now. They're fantastic.
Yeah.
So it's great. There's quite a few resources around here to be able to have those conversations too.
Wow. Yeah.
I think too, from to answer your question a little more directly, the practical tools that we've used.
Sure.
I think definitely there are budgeting spreadsheets that you can use. You can even do paper, just write out, just high level expenses. I think that's one good way just to start, just to say, oh, we spend X amount on the mortgage, car payments, whatever, food. You just get a high level overview and just kind of see where the cloud looks like things are going. And then, from a digital perspective, there's tools like Every Dollar, which is the Ramsey Solutions app, which is free for the basic version. And that is a pretty good tool. That's something that, comes with the Money Matters class. You get the premium version of that for a year. Another great tool is You Need a Budget, which is abbreviated YNAB. That's one that we personally use. That one is a great one, a little more nerdy on the nerdy side. That one kind of came around before Every Dollar. So before the Every Dollar stuff came out, we kind of got into that, and we just kind of kept rolling with that. Another great one is, just for tracking spending, not so much on the budgeting side. Mint is a great app for that. That will give you, it pulls from all your different accounts and gives you the ability to kind of see where things are going.
Yep.
It's not really a great budgeting tool because it's not as much for planning, but more of just seeing where things are going. So that's possibly another good way to get started.
Cool.
But yeah, I think those are some quick high level tools.
Yeah.
That,
Chris is an ultra nerd.
yeah, we could talk about that all day.
That's awesome. It's always fun to see the things that like excite people that they light up over. You know what I mean?
YNAB.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a YNAB geek.
That's awesome. That's so good. And what about, so next one on here, I mean, similar, it's kind of this eye-opening, whoa, if like I'm going to choose to start this. When it comes to debt, and again, it's part of the normalizing piece. I think what you were talking about is so helpful for people. I think the average car payment today is somewhere north of $500 now, was the most recent I've seen. Student loan debt's like $300 to $400 a month or something like that. It's just average. It's not to make you freak out if you're over one of those, but I mean, it's very common now. I think it's something like 20% of the US has like a negative 15. I don't want to exaggerate these too much, but a negative net worth, and more debt than what I have. So it's obviously a normal. But if somebody is, I think there's maybe people who are listening to this that feel like they're drowning in it, like how could I ever? And then there's others that they're fine with it. And then, like, hey, I've just always had it. It seems like no big deal. I kind of, use my credit card each month and try to pay as close as I can or whatever it is. What would you say to start navigating, the debt conversation?
I think the biggest part is your why.
Yeah.
Why are you doing this? Because if your why isn't clear, this is a hard process. I'm not going to pretend that getting out of debt was easy for us. We worked and worked and worked, and it was hard. Totally worth it. And I'm so glad we did. And now that we're done with that, life is so much better. But what is that why? And figuring that out is the biggest part. If you're looking at it, I want to retire at this age, which is often a difficult why because it's a little too far out there in the future for people to truly visualize. I want to be generous. I really want to be able to, if somebody comes to me and they need help with their mortgage, I want to be able to pay that for 3 months for them. Or I want to be able to send my kids to college and set them up for school or set them up for life without debt so that they can start ahead of where I was. Those types of whys, when you break that down, everything else becomes easier. So figuring out, why do I want to get out of debt? There's also a lot of really great resources about what God says about debt. I mean, he's not a huge fan. So just to give everybody a precursor on that one.
I think too, even just a very simple why is, maybe when you get your bills in the mail or in your email, like you don't have that sick feeling in your stomach, like, oh, I don't think we can pay this bill this month.
I was going to say the peace factor
peace is probably the biggest thing.
Yeah.
I think that, for us, I think that was a big thing. Dave Ramsey calls it financial peace for a reason, because really, I think having those financial pieces in place give you a peace about life, right?
Yeah.
So, when you're going through harder things, like for example, we've had a pretty rough year. We've had some deaths in the family, pets, things like that. We've had some other, pretty stressful things in life this year for us, after COVID. Yeah. And I think, not having the financial pieces in place would have put an immense mountain of even more stress on top of that, So it's one of those things where you get this part of your life in order and it makes other stuff easier, right? So,
Yeah. Even if you're thinking about something as simple as Chris had to make an unexpected trip to Michigan for part of his mom's funeral and all of that. And it was, okay, no problem. And 5-10 years ago, that would have been a game changer for us for that month. Like, okay, well, what aren't we paying in order to let you go do that? And so being able to just live life and relax is a big deal. It's kind of hard to find in the world nowadays.
Yeah. I have found, and I don't know if this might be a little personality based, but even just like listening to those Ramsey stories, I mean, there's so many, a 4-minute clip on YouTube, you don't have to commit a lot of time, and it normalizes, you're going to find some people in worse situations that you were that climbed out of even more. I mean, extraordinary numbers sometimes that people, and in a time window that doesn't seem to make sense. You're like, how'd you do that in a couple of years? Like, oh my gosh, and that can be just an inspirational starting point too, to be like, there's no hope. Oh, wait, there is. People do this all the time. You know, I'm not alone in this. So,
I think from a practical level, that's, I don't know if that's where you were going, but that's something that we both did a ton while we were going through this journey. Like, we need some motivation. Listen to what, you know, these people on the radio or on the internet, on the podcast are saying, like, well, they did it with less. You know, we should be able to do it too, you know? So.
Yeah. And also consider going to the Money Matters class. I will always plug that.
Right.
Because you instantly will walk into a community of people who are in the exact same spot that you are.
Yeah.
And so it's so motivating to be able to sit with other people. And sometimes it's motivating to go, they've got it harder than me and they're kicking it harder than me. Wait a minute, I need to step up my game, or I'm not alone, or I have people that I can talk to about this on a regular basis. That's pretty cool.
100%. 100%. Well, we put saving, it may be similar principles, but we put saving on the list as well. You know, again, say that's just not a discipline that I've been intentional with, or, you know, how do I start? How do I have that combo? Or, you know, I am in so much debt. What does saving look like? Do you have any, just principles, ideas around either having that conversation or beginning saving intentionally as well?
We talked about this ahead of time, which is why he's looking at me. The saving piece, if you're just saving to save, very few people can handle just saving to save. Most of us, that's not going to work. It definitely will never, ever work for me. It's just worthless. So again, having that goal, knowing what you're going for. If you're saving, maybe you're saving for Christmas. It comes every year. We shouldn't be surprised by that.
Right.
So we're saving for Christmas, but then we're also saving for the new car, or we're saving for things in the future. Give the money a name and make sure you know exactly where it's going. And then you've got that goal attached to why you're making the choices that you're making, because ultimately that really rolls back into what choices you're making every single day.
Yeah.
Okay, I really want to hit X goal, so that means I will not get the fancy cheese at HEB. I'm going to go with something more simplified this week so that I can go ahead
American.
and do that. Gross. But being able to make those choices is so similar to something like dieting. You've got to find a way that's a lifestyle for you, that works for you. And there's so many different ways to go about it, which is the cool part. It's just a matter of figuring out which lifestyle works for you. The same thing with money. Right. If you're going to go diet, like for me, I need to have a specific way that I live my life, and it's normalized now. Same thing financially. It's time, all of this stuff is the same.
Yeah. I think too, like for us, we kind of turned it into a little bit of a game. So we kind of played off each other, and we would, had some charts and things that we would, pretty pictures and things that we would color in as we were saving our emergency fund, or as we were, paying certain things off. Picture of the car or whatever, and shade it out or whatever. Just weird little things. And every time we paid $1,000 off on debt or on the mortgage, we would play a song. So the one we played all the time was what was it?
All I Do Is Win.
All I Do Is Win. Yeah,
that's awesome. That's
DJ
so
Khaled.
great, though. Yeah.
So you just kind of, you have to figure out how you can motivate each other and motivate yourselves. And I think too, to go back to your original question about parenting, we actually brought our kids into a lot of what we did.
Oh, that's great.
Not on the super detailed level, but just on especially because when we started, they were young.
Yeah.
We would say, we're not going to go out to eat today. We're going to go grab a half gallon of ice cream and make ice cream cones at home or something like that.
Right.
So you're just trying to kind of bring them in a little bit, and they really took to it pretty quickly and really understood that, hey, we're going to do this as a family. Then it was less of us having to say no constantly, right?
Right.
To, get them on board, like, hey, we're going to do this together as a family, and, make it less stressful that way too.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I love that. I mean, the number of people's stories that are, my parents never talked about money, or, it was just always stressful. They're always fighting about it, to be invited into that young and normalize that conversation around it young. It seems like such a big deal. And I love what you said about giving everything a name, because going back to part 3 of this series, if we are managers, not owners, that seems like a much healthier posture. I'm just saving indefinitely loosely because it's linked to my insecurity or whatever. And I just want more and more and more. I mean, it's just a never ending. It's hard to believe if you don't have a lot, but it is never ending. You can just want to accumulate forever, versus no, it's got a name, it's got a purpose, it's for this, and so on. Which if anybody wanted to, come to you and you're managing their money, you would need to be able to name those things. And so it's a much healthier posture. So I love that. Okay, then the kind of last how do I start question then is giving. So again, this is another one where if you never have, or maybe, you're a tipper, you put a 20 in the plate on Christmas or whatever that might be, but that kind of like, okay, I'm now thinking about some of these big goals. It feels like giving's going to pull me away from those goals, not launch me towards them. Yeah. How do you start that conversation?
That is an interesting one for us. So we've already gone through a little bit of our backgrounds, but my family was always major givers. Even though they weren't great with money, giving was a big part of who we are. So I learned the joy of generosity, the joy of giving at a young age. But for Chris, that was a much longer journey. That was much more difficult for him. And I think that's
still
worth
haven't
saying.
arrived yet.
Yeah, sure.
But I think that's okay to say, and I think that's really good to be able to admit and to be able to walk that path. So did you want to talk about some of the things that you've done?
Yeah, so I think, as we were learning how to budget and learning how to, put some structure around our finances, I think for me, as Christina mentioned, I'm a little on the nerdy side, or maybe a lot on the nerdy side. So like for me, her desire was to be able to, just randomly go out and say, oh, well, so-and-so needs this, and it's Christmas or whatever, we're going to get them $100 worth of whatever. And I would be like, that doesn't really fit in the budget.
Sure, yeah.
So what we actually kind of worked on was actually putting a line item in the budget for random, acts of kindness type stuff. So we actually have a line item in there, and if it doesn't get used that month, then it just rolls into next month, and which allows her to, get a little more, wildly generous with it. So, and we do the giving to church as well. And that's more of like a discipline thing. Like, okay, this is how much we can do. And I think early on we did it kind of in, try to figure out like what we could comfortably do and kind of work our way up to where we wanted to be. Kind of that idea of like a goal, like, okay, this is our end goal. We're not there yet. We're still trying to pay off debt, trying to do these other things. We're doing as much as we can. And then with the other part, we would do like, volunteering, doing things like that. So giving time as well. So that's, I think you had some thoughts on that too this morning.
Yeah, we weren't, and I think it's worth saying too, that when we started our journey with money, we weren't as connected to God as we are now. So we were fairly far away. So for something, along the lines of we're barely scraping by every single month. I was a stay-at-home mom at that time, and we were living on a single income. So getting that idea through to Chris, we should just give money to a church that we don't attend a whole lot was a big deal.
Right.
So giving somewhere was something, Buck has mentioned the whole concept of, yes, we would love for you to give to Northpoint, but give somewhere,
right,
and give what you can. And I heard that somebody mentioned that at the beginning of our journey of start the process somewhere. So if you as partners are really not able to hit an agreement on something, start where you can. So that included at the very beginning, okay, I really don't have finances I can afford to give right now, but I have time. So I'm going to give some of my time. And then that grows it's almost like that giving muscle. Like it grows that ability in you, but it also grows the excitement for giving. Yeah. Because then you see, the time that I gave, how much did that influence people? And then you're able to see the whole concept of sometimes in life, God gives you resources so that you can help other people. There's no way that I would be able to help somebody in Africa by just going over there. That's not something that's a time option for me right now.
Yeah.
But he has given me financial resources to be able to go and help with that.
Right.
So your brain starts to get used to that, and you start to get more and more excited about it. So that's pretty fun.
Yeah, I think too the idea that we've talked about, or that's been talked about on the last couple series as well, is the idea of investing in the vision and mission of Northpoint and, other organizations like that. I think that for me kind of flipped the switch too, because it's not like giving your money to church is kind of that weird, thing that not everybody does, obviously. And it's kind of just like, that preacher wants all my money kind of thing. And I think of it as, once I flip that switch in my head to say, this is an investment into the mission of the church and to reaching other folks, to try to spread the good news of Christ and things like that. I think that was really something that made it more real for me and made it something that I was willing to, actually invest in, So.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. No, I like that you use the word investing too, because for me personally, like just being transparent, when I think about like, man, if I didn't give and I did invest that, and could I give more later? Like there's these like things I tell myself, you know, but it is fun for me today to be, you know, this is about 11 years or so at Northpoint. And I can remember one service, about 150 people in Parkside Elementary. Today, you know, every single Sunday I engage about 5 or 6 times that amount, you know, and I think about that from an investment perspective, and not just more people, but in greater ways. You know, there's now things like Money Matters that didn't exist. There's all kinds of ways to come alongside people with short-term groups and community groups and new staff and all that kind of stuff, and how great our kids and student environments are now. And I'm like, man, this has been fun to watch the investment, you know, over time, to watch that grow and that life change happen. And I think Ramsey, if I'm not mistaken, I think he does talk about, even when you're attacking debt, having giving still be a consistent part of that. And he kind of talks about, you know, granted, this is maybe more selfish motivations, but he talks about there's that thing, because it is behavioral, like it's that acknowledgement that it's not mine, puts me in that kind of management position to stay on top of, you know, whatever you choose. If you choose 10%, stay on top of that other 90%, different than you would be if you're just kind of, 100% wherever it can go, you know what I mean? That kind of thing. And he talks about it's this weird, it is certainly hard to trust if you've never tried it or done it, but somehow they're all linked. And he encourages you to kind of keep that.
It is a very
out.
strange phenomenon, but it's definitely something that I've experienced for sure. You know, and it doesn't matter whether you're giving, you know, percentage wise, use a percentage or a dollar amount or whatever, like are you giving on the net or the gross, and you know, doing all the calculations and all that stuff. Just doing it is the key, and getting started is the key. I think, you know, that was the hardest part for me. And I think too, like when you are in the midst of chaos in your financial life, doing that and putting that as a priority is difficult. There's no question about it, but it is totally worth it, you know. And I think God does provide, you know, you make that commitment to give that percentage, whatever that ends up being, and you will find, and it's just that weird thing, like you will find he will take care of you. Like, oh, well, we ran out of money at the end of the month or whatever, and somebody will drop off a gift card or something, you know. It's just weird, and, and it works.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I love hearing you say that, because I've experienced that, and I feel like I'm fairly intentional. I'm like, I don't know. And there's times where I'm like, the math just doesn't make, the spreadsheet doesn't, we gave how much and we still, you know, and then and I know you are like even, you know, multiplier on that. And so if you're like still like it's weird, then it's like proven, it's definitive. You know? I'm like, okay. So
math doesn't explain everything.
Yeah, it's wild.
And I think too, it's worth saying for the folks who feel as though they have their financial lives together, if you aren't giving at that point, there's all these, just listen to the series. There's no reason that we shouldn't give. Giving is good for everyone, especially for yourself, which it should never be a selfish thing, but there's that wonderful, I just love that feeling of giving, but the putting it first.
Yeah.
So, you know, even right now, our conversation giving was the last thing that we talked about. But when we put it first, so that it's not even something that we're considering in our budget, that's something that also helps with that discipline that Chris was talking about at the beginning of, okay, I've made the commitment. I'm going to do that. It's going to be uncomfortable in these specific areas because I'm making that shift, but do it first. And that really does make a huge difference.
Wow. Yeah. No, that's so helpful. Well, let's see. Let's just close on this, you know, being on the other, whether this is from personal experience or going through, you know, curriculum yourself, or being on the other side of couples and Money Matters. Is there anything that we haven't hit that you would want to encourage people with, or normalize, or final advice, or anything like that?
Go ahead. What you got?
I think probably the biggest advice I would say is just get started. Like if you are struggling with it, just take one step, you know, and it's kind of a, not necessarily Dave Ramsey related or whatever, but just find that one thing that you can do today that will get you into a better place tomorrow. You know, find that one thing every day that can, you know, propel you forward. So.
Yeah. And then I think one of the things that I always think about, especially around these types of conversations, of what is that bigger goal? What is that bigger vision? If you think about it, if everybody who goes to a church gave a percentage, then we would literally put social services out of business in our country today, because we would be able to impact so many lives across the entire nation. And it would be easy. It would be fast. It would be fun. We would be able to do so many amazing things. So whether you need to look at it from that huge perspective or you want to look at it from the small perspective in your own life of, I see that a child needs a coat and they don't have one this summer or this winter. No one needs a coat in summer in Texas. But, there were times in our lives where giving that child a coat was a stretch for our family, but I will never regret giving that child a coat and making sure that we're able to care for them in that way. So being able to do those things, I think, is a big deal.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so great. Well, thank both of you guys for being willing to be on this. We said at the very beginning that talking about money can be weird. So there you go, do it in front of however many people are going to listen or watch this. Really appreciate just your transparency, your help, your leadership in this. And thank you to everybody else tuning in or watching this week. We're going to be starting a brand new series this Sunday. If you're tracking this live, if you're a couple weeks delayed, then it has already begun. So excited for you to join us and tune in for that.